Let's swap.
I'm Steve at South of Heaven on Instagram, one of the Hive Scum podcasts guys.
Yeah, I'm Bill, the Ruin 501 on Instagram, and I'm a Hive Scum listener.
one of three.
Yeah, and I'm Trey on Discord. I'm Four Eyes. Yeah, so I want to ask you all about organizing events. So both y'all in the past year or so have organized pretty amazing events where people came and played Mordheim, but each had like a very distinct flavor. And kind of what inspired you to run a Mordheim event?
I guess for me, I had started running events, I want to say like 2021. We did the first like Under the Dice sort of event, the charity chiller, where we got together just like a bunch of friends at a local venue that does like underground shows, and we played like Magic the Gathering, and we had kit bashing, and we had boards for like playing war games, and it was really no thought other than like, oh, let's like just raise some money for a charity and like hang out and play the games that we all like to do. Like it's an excuse to get everyone together.
Were you organizing like punk shows and stuff before that?
No, not me really, but like a lot of my friends run a space in Holyoke called Dracula, and they do a lot of shows out of there. It's a really cool spot. It's in an old just mill building down in Holyoke on Canal Street.
Oh, yeah.
It's really cool space. They put a lot of work into it. But yeah, they were kind enough to let us use the space for the night to run our little game day. And then that was like so successful and fun that everyone was like, oh, let's do another one. So we did another one, and it was even better. And like, we raised even more money. And then we were like, okay, well, this is clearly something that's like we can do. So let's just keep doing it. And then that spiraled into, I met Paul. Me and Paul like instantly clicked on Mordheim because he was the guy getting our crew into playing Mordheim. So, I was like, let's do a game day with this. Like, cause Paul showed me Bill's Mordheim 2021, and I was like, oh, dude, yeah, if we can't go to this, like, we got to just do it ourselves. Like, hell yeah, this guy's doing it. Like, why can't we? And so we did it. It's awesome. Really, it was inspired by Bill doing it. Like Bill did something, and we're like, well, if he can do it out of this space, like, let's just do the same thing, like up in our area.
Yeah. And Bill, what got you into, like, what inspired you to run a Mordheim event?
Man, like, it was, so I was mobilized overseas when like the whole Mordheim 2019 event was going down, and like, it seemed like untouchable, like very inaccessible, just like looking at all the artists and all the people who are attending it and going to it. And it seemed like really exclusive. I didn't feel like, I think I messaged someone on there just asking like how I could get involved, and like they didn't even get back to me. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, people like John Blanche are going, like Thomas Perrinian or whatever, like they're going to it. This is some like elite circle of people. I didn't really feel very welcome. So whenever I was listening to the Between the Boltermine, or dragged into Turbolasers, the Between the Boltermine guys, and when they interviewed Alexander about it, like they actually all said the exact opposite. They're like, if you want to get involved with this kind of stuff, or how like even do it yourself, like just reach out to people. And that's when I kind of got on Instagram and just trying to dive into the whole grim, dark aesthetic. And I just started reaching out to people and just asked them, like, you know what, like, if I can't be invited to something like that, like, fuck it. Like, I'll just do it myself, see if these people want to come down to Texas. It's a long shot because who the hell wants to fly from overseas to Texas? But apparently a few of them did.
I would have.
Yeah. And so I, because it was my first event, like I had never had any experience doing it. I wanted to kind of keep it kind of small, so that way the stakes were a little bit lower. I didn't want to invite like a ton of people or just open it up to the world, because like finding a venue and like making it as like cheap as possible. Like affordability was like my biggest thing. I had people who were like, some of them are doctors, and then some of them were like unemployed that were coming to this event. So I really wanted to make sure like as much stuff was as free as possible, like the food was as cheap as possible, like there's like affordable lodging nearby and all that shit. So yeah, that's kind of why I threw it. And like Mordheim's always been, I'm sure I'll talk about a little bit later, but like I've got a soft spot for dead games. Like I don't really care if it's alive, if it has a pulse. Like I don't really have much of an interest in it.
I think there's like a distinct difference between your event, Bill, and Nemo, because Nemo was essentially as many people as there are tables were invited. And then you did, yeah. And then Bill, you did like an invitational thing. Like, can you talk a little bit about like invitation practice? Like
his letters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I wanted to be as like respectful as possible to the people who were like going to make the effort to come all the way down. So the way that like I was thinking, or at least I had the story I was telling myself in my head, like if I fuck this up, then like they've spent like time and money and all that stuff to come to an unattractive place of America. When I talked to, I had the privilege to speak to a few people. Anna from Gardens of Mercate, like she gave me like an hour per time, just like ask her like, hey, like I know on your blog you talk a lot about props and prop making, like can you tell me a little bit more about that? And she's like, yeah, like I love to make it as immersive as possible. I'm sure I would have found out or discovered Dungeon Synth from Steve and the guys at some point anyway this year, but she's one who like turned me on to Dungeon Synth and all that kind of stuff. So we had Dungeon Synth playing in the background during the event. You know, setting the mood was a big topic for her as well. And Alessandro from Dark Ages Workshop, he kind of gave me some good advice about that as well. Yeah. So he
how is he as like, because like obviously you can only get a read of people from like Instagram. Like he seems very dark and mysterious from his from his Instagram posts. Is that kind of how he is, like chatting with him?
Dude, he like on Zoom, like I expected there to be like vials of blood and shit in the background, but like
a ski mask.
Yeah. He's like he's like the biggest fucking teddy bear like I've ever met. Like totally scary. Like if I saw him on the street, I would probably like turn the other way or go to like a more well-lit area, but he's a super nice guy. And very like generous with his time too. He talked to me for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, just about like his whole like Mordheim aesthetic process and shit.
Yeah. He has a very, very cool creative process, like adding like hair fibers to his models to get that really gross stringy look on like the rat people and stuff is so it's so good. He's so talented.
Yeah, he's got an eye for that kind of stuff. So it was a like I'd like mine and Steve's, I was thinking about this earlier, like mine and Steve's events are very similar and they share a lot of commonalities. Like if I had like, looking back on now, I wish I could have like done like 50 people. But again, like they were both doing the same thing. Like at the end of the day, we're all like playing games, right? And trying to make Mordheim and like Mordheim as more accessible to more people.
I definitely agree that like the idea behind what each of us were doing was essentially the same, just getting people down to play a game. Like that's really all we cared about. You know, we had what resources we had to do the same job.
Yeah.
But now, like, I mean, bringing it back to like what's going on now with like Virginia and like the planning going on down there, like, you know, anyone can do these game days, like just through your local library, like limited time frame, you know, but like between the hours of operation at the library, you can get a free room to host whatever event you want.
Yeah, I love that. If somebody is like on Instagram and they're like, oh, I want this in my life, but I don't know how to get started. Like, what advice would you give to somebody who just like wanted to maybe run their own event?
I guess like if you're in like kind of a secluded area where you don't really know anyone or you don't have a community built yet, you know, like the biggest thing is like find your local game store if there is one accessible to you, you know, like that's always like best way to start. Try and find people local through like a very common ground area. Other than that is like look for the online community because people are crazy. People will drive 5 hours to go to an event. Like people fly from across the country if the event sounds like interesting enough or is niche enough, you know. Like if you're doing a Battlefleet Gothic tournament, like narrative campaign, people would probably fly from all over the country to go do that. So it's really like finding your audience. So like the online community is like a huge tool in, you know, like just finding a group, like a like-minded group to play these games that you want to do. So yeah, finding a local game store would be the first step. Finding an online community that kind of fits your niche or like kind of that you resonate with. Flyering around, like legit, like putting up a poster at your local library probably goes a very long way. That's pretty much all I can think of. You know, having a core group of friends also goes pretty far.
Yeah. Do you feel like that resonates with how you got going, Bill? Like if you were to like somebody is like, I want to do that. I want to make an event happen. And they're kind of starting from scratch. Maybe they have like a local gaming group that like plays 40K, but they want to dive into this more specific stuff. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think I agree with like 100% with what Steve said. Like, it's the resources are there. You just have to be, I guess, not educate, but just make people more aware of them. Like, just through the last like 7 to 8 months, just by joining like a Discord server, like I live in like the third largest city in the country, and like I still feel like I'm all alone. Like I'm the only guy here who plays Mordheim, and I'm sure like that's like not true, right? But based on where my geographic location is, like I never would have met John Hickey, the guy Retromundo on Instagram, who like effing
Saint
Mordheim. Yeah.
Saint.
Yeah. Like nicest guy you'll ever meet. Like never would have met him if Alessandro like hadn't told me about him. He's like, hey, there's like this other guy like who lives in Houston. Like you should connect with him, right? And like I think places like safe, positive places that are conducive to people meeting each other and shared interests, like Steve's Discord server, the In Rust We Trust Discord server, is a fantastic place as well. Like even more so, I think, than Instagram. Instagram, like you're throwing darts in the dark, right?
Yes.
If you send people direct messages, like sometimes like some guy just like reached back to me, like I just send him a message like, hey, I really liked your paint job on this, like last year, almost a year ago. And he just responded last week. He was like, oh, sorry, like I didn't see the message request, you know? So like places that are very active and like safe, and I say safe meaning like no one's really an asshole, and everyone's generally positive and they give constructive criticism to your work, like Steve's Discord server are a great place to get involved and to get started. Just because from that alone, it cobbles together hundreds of people from all over the world. And I think in the In Rust We Trust Discord server, there's a guy who's like, oh shit, like I live like 20 minutes from you. And
that's literally happened like 3 times over the past couple weeks. Like post Adepticon, Mordheim, like Nate, TJ, all those guys in Michigan or Illinois, like they're all they were all like, all right, well, we're gonna do our little, you know, Chicago Mordheim crew or like gaming crew, and like so many people were piping. I'm like, yo, I live like within 2 hours. Let's set up a day. And like some guy that was walking by the under the dice booth, like, you know, he checked out the magazine, he saw Mordheim, he's like, this is all sick. Like, how do I get involved? And we give him an invite to the Discord, and then, you know, come to find out they all live near each other and they just played Mordheim last weekend. Like this random guy, Adam, that was walking by, and Nate, they all got together and played Mordheim. Oh, like it was so great to see that like just going on in the Discord.
Yeah. And it's like, if you don't know, you don't know. Like you just need to ask. Like, and it's really difficult at first, in my opinion, like put yourself out there and just even ask someone like Steve at Adepticon, like, yo, Under the Dice fanzine, like this looks sick as shit. Like, what is this, right? Because I think sometimes people kind of get wrapped up in their own minds about it. Like, you know, the Wire Brothers saying like, just reach out to people, and we think you'll be surprised as to what you get back, right?
100%.
Yeah.
If someone has like 10, 20, 30 fucking thousand followers or whatever on Instagram, and you may feel like you're not like worthy or ineligible to like have access to these people, but if you just reach out and say, hey, like, I really like your paint job, how did you do that? 9 times out of 10, they take that as a compliment and they'll respond to you. Or like, hey, like, I saw you set up that event, Nemo 23, like, how do I do something like big like that? Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely get that feeling too, because like even messaging you, Bill, before we had ever spoken, like just about Mordheim, your event, I was just like, well, I want to go to this. How do I get to go to this? And I was like, this guy's going to just call me a nerd and say, yeah, seat's taken. Like, but that's like, that comes from that, like, like where we are in our hobbies, I guess. Like growing up, like Warhammer's a fucking freaking nerd. That's and that it's like you got to kind of like hush hush about it. But I'm at an age now where that shouldn't bother me. But I'm still like, oh, do I tell this person I play Warhammer, or does this person want to talk about Warhammer? But yeah, I still always get these feelings of like, this person's not going to want to talk to me. This person's not going to even respond to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't help that I also hate using Instagram as like a social platform.
Yeah. I deleted mine. I just couldn't be on there.
That's fair.
Yeah. And I know I'm missing out on like, because that's where so many people hang out. But I just find Discord to be just such a more rich environment where people will actually engage with you and have a conversation, especially like the NRUS one. Also the Between the Bolter and Me Discord. Like you find these like really like little armpits of the internet where like just people are doing amazing stuff, and it just inspires me. Like seeing your like both your boards, like it just makes me want to build something incredible. And whether or not I execute it, like
it's right there.
That's enough. Like look at that. That's
I put all my prime models on that cardboard.
Yeah, so I kind of want to talk a little bit about like Mordheim specifically, and like playing games that are not supported anymore. What drew you to Mordheim when they're not making models, they're not updating the rules, they're like GW isn't hosting events or anything? Like what brought you there?
That's the beautiful thing about Mordheim is they are making models. Like as much as they don't think they are, those new models, man, they're perfect. Like they work beautifully. But something Paul always says that like once you pick up that book, you never go back. Like the second you pick that book up, it like grabs you. If if it speaks to you, it grabs you. And there's the setting, the tone, the rules, like it is kind of crunchy, but it's also not really. Like when you finally figure it out, like once you get past the hit charts and all the tables and stuff, like it's just there's something about it, and it scratches that itch that I always look for in a lot of games. It doesn't fill everything that I want, but it does a lot of it.
What do you feel about carrying the game? Like the lack of kind of support for.
I think like the fact that GW doesn't do anything for it, or the fact that because the fact that the community has like upheld this game and like continued to create just warband scenarios, like people just making their own things. Like I wrote my own scenario for it. I know John Hickey wrote a really awesome one, like based on the Chaos Gods. People make war bands, they're constantly being tuned and edited. Like, oh, this doesn't work, this works. Like, okay, now this war band is a little more legitimate after playtesting. People house ruling the game book to kind of suit their needs. Like, I've seen a lot of people move Mordheim from you activate everything to I activate everything to you go, I go, like alternate activations. And people say it's like done great things for the game so far, but I haven't been able to test it. But just knowing how alternating actions goes, I can only imagine how much better the game gets with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I really loved your multiplayer scenario at Nemo. That was a lot of fun. It just created so much chaos, and it was nice to have like little secret objective cards that you made. It just made for just a really dynamic.
Yeah, I think that stuff really adds like a lot. The hidden, like, you not knowing what I have to do, I think is such a cool, fun little addition to the game. But and those are legit rules. That's straight out of Town Crier.
Oh, interesting.
Like the multiplayer rules are all that stuff. The secret hidden agendas that we used, all of that is from the Town Crier. That's all GW.
Oh, interesting. Oh, okay.
Which I know it's crazy that they would do something like that, but yeah, that's them, that's theirs. You know, I had to change them a little bit. Like I tuned it a little bit to work better for our event and like generating more weird stone and stuff like that. But yeah, the overall rules for everything that's on the GW team.
Yeah, and like for me, like carrying on a dead game, like I don't want Games Workshop to touch it. Like there's a lot of people out there who want Games Workshop to support Mordheim again. And like the only thing I would ever want them to do is like create some like maybe scenery just to make it a little bit more accessible for people who are intimidated by it. But like I don't want them to fuck it up. Like it's no longer theirs, I don't think. Like it's the community's. Like they've done it over the last like 2 decades, and Thomas gifted it basically to the world, you know, to allow them to, and he's publicly said over and over again, like, take it and run away with this, like do with it what you will. Like this is all of our world. We all just like play in it. And I just really don't give a shit like what Games Workshop is like actively doing, to be honest. Like with 40K, Age of Sigmar, like I'm a big square-based like Warhammer Fantasy guy from back in the day, and like even with them bringing back the old world, like I just can't get excited about it. But Mordheim, like carrying on Mordheim, like that's what I do care about, you know, and other similar games like specialist games.
Yeah, like do you think we'll see like a return of like Gorka Morka or Battlefleet or any of that stuff?
I think Battlefleet, I was really surprised they decided to bring back like Adeptus Mechanicus or the Aeronautica Imperialis or whatever, like the flight game, and not like Battlefleet Gothic. I was very confused by that.
Yeah.
I don't Orca just because like that game was written in like 6 weeks or something like that. You know, I don't think it didn't sell well like at all.
I keep having thoughts and I'm like, oh man, I want to say this, and then I forget it when it comes time to say it. So the way it goes.
Yeah. But I agree with Steve. Like it's like I like 90% of it. Like it's like 90% of the way there to being like my ideal game. And there's some things that like you can house rule. Like Steve's great at just like hacking and like house ruling, tweaking things that just better suit your needs. And like, there's nothing out there saying you can't do that. Like for my wife,
Kieran even says that. He says it flat out. Like, this is your game. Do what you want.
Yeah. Like I streamline the rules so that I could get my wife to play with me. So we play like mini Heim. So it's like half the warband size. We remove the rules for like the specific weapons and stuff. And like, she likes it. Like she enjoys playing it. She likes the aspect of climbing around, like diving charges is like her favorite fucking thing in the world. Like
brutal.
You know? So, but yeah.
Even the stuff with GW load, like the terrain kits and all that, like the price point has just gotten to a point where it's like, I'd rather spend $20 on printing this book out myself and play with the models I have.
Yeah.
Than spend what was that boarding action box that was just terrain? What was it? $200?
I think it's like $180 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like whatever happened to the cardboard terrain? Like I know like some people hate on that, but that original box set cardboard terrain looks so cool on the table. Gives you multiple levels, like even the old Necromunda stuff. I don't know if you ever had that with the old bulkhead pieces that clipped into all the cardboard like that. Dude, that stuff, like we were trying to make some of that for Nemo. We wanted to like order, because the print shop I go to, you can do cardstock printing. And I was like, oh, what if we just ordered buildings printed on it, because they have all the files for the old buildings on a certain website that we will not mention. And you just bring that to your print shop, print it out, and then clip it out and if you just like 3D print the corner pieces, like that's a no brainer.
That's awesome.
We were going to do that, but then, time got ahead of us and we were, day before the event, we were building terrain.
It was, the terrain, like walking into that room, it was just stunning. It was awe-inspiring. There was just so much amazing, like so many people brought amazing stuff. It was mind-blowing.
I wish you could have saw the energy in my house of like almost 20 people frantically painting terrain for the next day was another level. It was crazy to witness it. Like you went into the kitchen, there's 6 people around a table with wash buckets and solo cups just filled with washes, just slamming it on models. We had a bunch of drop cloths all over my living room with just terrain being smashed with big paintbrushes. Just, all right, this stuff's dry. Pick it up. And like people are moving it to the next room. It was a spectacle to behold.
Love that. For Bill, for your event, like people are like mailing whole boards.
Like I made 5 of the. Oh, no, you're right. Alex mailed his down. I made 5 of the 8 or 5 of the 7 boards. No, 5 of the 8 boards myself, and then one guy drove his down from Denton, which is like 5 hours away. Alex Van Allen, AV Hobbies on Instagram, like he mailed his MS Train Labs board down.
That's insane.
Yeah, like that, to behold that thing was like fucking nuts. Like it's, in talking to the artist who made it, like he was very critical of it because it was his first like kind of bigger commission. And now he basically like does it full time, but it was his first one and the buyer backed out. And then Alex got it for, I wouldn't say for a song, but for an affordable price for what you get, in my opinion.
Yeah. You never need another board.
Yeah, exactly. And when he told me the price point, I was like, good for you, not for me. But like, he was like, if you think about it, he's like, I will never need, like Steve said, I will never need another board. It's like, this is like, I can never make something as good as this. So it was a genuine pleasure to play on that thing.
That's just inspiration for me to go bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked him, I was like, dude, you need to drive your board over to Nemo. And he's like, man, he's like mailing it back up. Like a lot of things like broke. Like I'm very, very sensitive about it now. I'm like, yeah, I totally get it.
I mean,
I don't think he's that far from me either.
I think he's like 2.5 hours or something, or 3 hours.
Because him and his buddy, I think his name's Garrett, they drove down to Nemo together.
Yeah.
So you made 5 boards? That's so much by yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I had a long time, man. Like when I first started reaching out and decided it was something I was going to do, I think it was like April of last year. And then, so I had 6-7 months to do it. I was like part of the time I was on furlough for my job because I was doing my internship in grad school. So I had some extra time lying around. I was on paternity leave for part of it. I just didn't sleep much last year. Yeah, it was a lot.
Absolute madman.
So now that you all have like run successful events, like is there stuff looking back that you would have done differently, or like you would like to have changed now that you all have like leveled up?
I got, brother.
If you got an answer, you can go for it. I have a laundry list.
Yeah, like I definitely would have enjoyed myself more. Like my anxiety was through the fucking roof because I had, like, to me, my internal like stakes were so high because I had people flying from like overseas and stuff. And like, I was constantly worried about making sure people were having a good time. That like, looking back at it, like I had an awful time. Like, not awful, but like I had a good time, but like it should have been like an amazing time. And it was kind of like, the day you get married, like everyone always tells you like, oh, it's going to go by like in an instant. I remember like snippets of it. And mine was 2.5, 3 days long. Like, I'm surprised, Steve, if you remember anything from Nemo, like I'd be surprised.
I remember bits and pieces.
Like looking back at it, I wish I had been able to find a different venue to allow it to have been bigger. Because my initial and one of my whole things was like to show people that you can do something like this. You don't need to live in like, Europe to do it, and to know John Blanche to do these kinds of things. And then I inadvertently did the kind of like the same thing, or gave out the same vibe, I think. So like, I wish I'd been able to been a little bit more courageous and like find a bigger venue to allow more people to have come. Because like some people that have reached out since then, they've asked me like, hey, I want to do something like similar on Instagram. Can you send me your stuff? Like, yeah, sure.
It's step one though. Like this is, stepping stones. This is your first one, like
yeah,
it only gets bigger and better.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, so I wish I had been able to have make it at least seem more accessible, because I think like, talking to both of y'all, like y'all know me a little bit now. Like I'm like to think like I'm a nice guy. Like so many strangers just ask me on Instagram, like, hey, like, how can I do this? Like, I won't get back to you right away because I've got a lot going on, but I will sit down and like send you a mammoth email. Like,
he will.
What about you, man?
Making sure everyone was having fun was like my biggest priority for the day. Like making sure no one was having a bad time was like my biggest worry, because that's all that mattered. Was like, that's the whole reason I did the thing, was to make sure everyone, like, I wanted people to come have fun and play a game. That's really what I cared about. And like, I wanted there to be a narrative to the game, but I realized when you have that many people, you can't really cater to a narrative. Like you can't really have a story to tell other than everyone telling their own little stories. Which worked out, because then I just took the data from that and I just continued when I went to Adepticon and ran Adepticon Mordheim, and I like continued the story that way. Because probably no one knows this, but if you read the packet for the event, there was like a story about like a necromancer like in the city of Mordheim in the current day, like collecting the last of the weird stone, becoming all powerful beasts. And no one at Adepticon or no one at Nemo got to play against it, but at Adepticon there was a final battle with the model that we had commissioned from Pax Acrylica. Which I don't know, Trey, did you get to see that?
I don't think I actually saw the model.
It was.
I heard you talking about it, but
yeah, it's pretty much Godfrey from Elden Ring, with like his big axe and like multiple arms and everything. Like he's a big behemoth. But yeah, that making sure everyone was having fun. So I kind of put like what I wanted in the backseat for Nemo. Making sure it went smoothly was like a big thing. I was like running around the whole day, just making sure everything was going right, making sure pairings were okay, table, like people weren't playing on the same table if we could help it. Next year, I think we got all the kinks worked out pretty good. Like we're just gonna do. Well, I guess I won't tell everyone what we're gonna do, but we have it situated for next year so that it's less strain on us for the planning of the day and like how rounds go and everything like that. Having fun for myself is like a big priority for next year, because like I have fun seeing everyone have fun, but like I want to have some fun. So more downtime between rounds, like that I think was a big, like not a complaint, but people wanted like, time to shop at the vendors, because we had vendors there. Like people wanted to be able to take pictures of their models and like just check everything out. Like there wasn't a lot of time for that. More games in general, like maybe just not just the Nemo games, like other games going on. And this is like my biggest thing that I want for next year, and we kind of tried to do it this past year, was a photographer, like someone that we set aside and like, you're taking photos today. Like you can hang out, have fun, do whatever you want, but just take photos like all day. And we had a guy who had a camera and came, but he didn't end up taking he didn't really take any photos. But Terry and Greg Wire, or no, I think it was actually Eric, were taking like a ton of photos throughout the day, and it worked out fine. But yeah, like a designated photographer for next year would be awesome, because I want to like a way to like just be able to look back and see everything like in its natural state. Like I think that's like really, I don't know. It feels great to be able to look and see the candid photos of people playing games, having fun, the smiles on everyone's faces, like just hanging out.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
think documenting is such a big deal. Like just creating artifacts around it. Like listening to your podcast afterwards, like felt so good because there's just it was nice to like hear different people's perspective. Like as you're like pulling people into the like that while they're like waiting for food or whatever, you just like grab some random person, and like being able to listen to like different stories about what was happening like on your podcast. It was just it felt amazing because like I had my own like personal narrative of like what happened, and then like getting all the different points of view. I was just, it was so cool.
Well, and you played a huge role in the whole thing with the soundtrack. I mean, the Basilisk tape like sent the event, I think, over the top. Like, and you ask any of us, Gage, me, Paul, Terry, Phil, anyone, like that soundtrack like really spoke to what we were doing. Like it set the tone so well. And you captured, I think, the game perfectly in that 2-hour soundtrack.
There's just this thing where like watching you all like post pictures of your boards, like the amount of like effort that was going into it, it just is inspiring. It makes me want to like do something epic to be a part of it. Like I want to continue to push this thing to be as big and as cool as possible. And like
you nailed it.
I think similar for your thing, Bill. Like even though like I wasn't even a part of it, just like looking at like your invitations, the boards that you all had, the designer like give a talk. It's taking this like professional level of work. I don't know. I hate the word professional, but it's just like raising the quality to something that you normally just don't see in little hobby land. Like, cause I feel like I'll go to like the few times I've gone to like a 40K tournament, it's just like, oh, here's like 2 pieces of cardboard taped together to make it like a functioning piece of terrain. And like,
not in this house.
Yeah. I don't know. There's just something about like everybody involved in your events, not like both achieving excellence in like their models and the terrain in like every aspect. And then also just the positive reinforcement of like somebody will post a picture of something they're working on and everybody will like pile in to say like, dude, this is amazing. This looks so sick. I'm so pumped to like play on this thing. And then that just like raises the bar for the next person to like do the next big thing. And
bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
And it's funny. Because the Discord started as just like our first year at Adepticon, like a way to keep in contact with the people that we met at Adepticon. That's like all it really was, because we all felt really inspired just seeing like Dark Text models, Johnny's board, like Nate and a couple of the other guys, TJ, like everyone had all these crazy Necromunda models. And at that point, like we were kit bashing and stuff, but we weren't like we weren't making our own boards really. Like we weren't making any like really crazy stuff at that point. And then seeing all that stuff really pushed the envelope of, oh, we can go nuts with this shit.
Yeah.
And it like opened our eyes to like, oh, there's other people that are also getting like, they're also kit bashing. They're also making crazy stuff. Like let's just go full sail with it. And like, you know, In Rust just really came from wanting to keep a small community that we met together, and then it just kind of spiraled to now it's like this way bigger thing. It's awesome.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, and like I want to touch on that, what you just said too, or what you were talking about, Steve, because like earlier when you talked, would you give someone who lives in like middle of nowhere, like a flyover state that isn't, you know, may not have a community yet, right? you're not going to find a Mordheim player, or the odds of you finding a Mordheim player or someone who's interested in specialist games or dead games at a Games Workshop store is almost nil, I would say. Like, I'm sure there's people out there who like frequent their local Games Workshop store that like, oh, I remember Battlefleet Gothic from back in the day, or like, oh yeah, I used to play Mordheim. But now like those people are probably like in their mid 40s. So probably at the stage of life, developmental stage, where they're not necessarily going to a Games Workshop store regularly, but they are going to, as Steve pointed out, a local game store, like your friendly local game store, probably.
Well, and another point to that, like that we always forget, because we come from a background of like hardcore shows and underground shit where no one has money. But like in this hobby that we have, like most people have money just due to the nature of the beast, or you're an adult at this point. It's like, oh, I'll drive 5 hours. Oh, I'll take a plane to go do this cool event. Like people are much more open to traveling for something that is in their niche. Like, I was going to get into story time, but we're not going to go into story time. So, but yeah, no, I think there's a huge factor in the fact that just being older now, more people, it's more accessible to most of us, which kind of makes me sad thinking about like a younger kid not being able to do it. But
but there are young kids like
Seb and their whole crew.
Yeah, and then like there was a young person who was playing at Nemo who now shows up to like our local events
to Flatbread and stuff?
Yeah, to Flatbread and to play Kill Team there. So
that's awesome.
That's something cool about Mordheim and games like Necromunda or Forbidden Psalm and stuff like that, is like building a crew of like 5 models is not as overwhelming as like a 2,000 point army or whatever for like Age of Sigmar or something. It's like it's a lot more accessible. I think it's actually amazing how many young people are involved.
Yeah, I mean Seb traveled to Adepticon and like was hanging out almost the whole time we were there, besides when they were doing Horus Heresy and a couple other events. And now Seb's talking about going to the July event in Richmond.
Okay.
Awesome. So you're right. Younger people are involved and they are coming out.
Yeah.
It is funny though how like not like at Nemo, not as like almost no one from my local scene really showed up. Like, we're playing Mordheim. It's not Age of Sigmar, it's not any of that. It's like, why would I go to that? That has no appeal to me. But
yeah.
But it's cool though when you see like the certain faces pop out of the woodwork that you haven't seen in a few years. They're like, oh, this is sick. I'm stoked that you're doing this. And you're like, I haven't seen you in a while. That's awesome that you even turned up.
Yeah. What do you all see going forward? You've achieved these like amazing events, and I know Steve, you mentioned that there's going to be another Nemo, but like, how are you all projecting yourselves into the future?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, Nemo is happening. We're kind of just going to combine. So we did the charity chiller, or we've done 2 of them so far. We want to do a third, and we kind of skipped over it this year because of Nemo. So next year we're just going to combine the 2 events, and I'm doing a full weekend in January. So January 27th and 28th, Saturday, Sunday. We already rented the hall. The hall is reserved, and we're going to do Nemo on the Saturday so that people can stay late, like they can come in on a Friday, leave on a Sunday, and they get all the things that they want out of Mordheim. And we're going to try and like do Magic the Gathering events, like, other games that aren't just Mordheim, and we're going to spread it all across it, try and raise some money for a local charity, which is Dakin Humane Society is probably going to be the one we go with because that's who we've gone with in the past. And just make it like bigger and more accessible to more people that might just not, like they might be a fringe, like, oh, I like these things, but I don't play Mordheim, so I have no reason to go. Like, okay, well now here's X, Y, and Z things for you to do, and just come hang out.
Yeah.
Like we would like to do some Gasland stuff like that. Like because at the last charity chiller we did the King of Kit Bash where we had a huge table of bits. People paid a couple bucks and you got to build a miniature, and then it was submitted into like a contest and there were prizes. So we'd like to do something like that. That's pretty much like our future for Nemo and the charity stuff and running events. Adepticon next year, I'm waiting to hear back from Matthias. We're gonna run another event, hopefully get a bigger space. But that's all we really have planned so far.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Well, it's 6 months out or 7 months out,
Yeah.
Plenty of time. If you listeners want to do something at Nemo, hit me up. We can get you to run a game, whatever you want. You want to sell shit? Like we got vendor hall space, whatever you want.
What about you, Bill? How are you like taking your event and building off of it and moving in the future, or what are you thinking?
Man, on one hand, like I'm extremely, I think like a lot of people, I think when I was talking to you, Trey, like, I don't know if you said this or I did, but like listening to the Hive Scum crew is like a friend simulator. You know what I mean? Like group of like really awesome.
We are friends.
But like living down here, like I don't have that. Like the closest thing I have is John Hickey. And even though we live in the same city, he lives an hour and 15 minutes from me.
Holy
so like to meet up and play Mordheim is like a big deal. Like I got to take a day of PTO to like go play games.
Yeah.
So like I don't think looking back at it, like the resources to organize like a larger scale event like that I would want to do. So unfortunately, I'm kind of relegated to the side of like helping facilitate or like assist people do that wherever they want to. So unfortunately,
that's like
this year, like I did like everything, like made the terrain, made the invitations, wrote newsletters, like booked Airbnbs, like made sure like food was like prepped and like dinner reservations and all that shit. Right. So like, personally, I don't think I've got enough gas left in me to do that ever again.
Bill's joining the Nemo team.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think like even if you don't do another Mordheim event, or like another event at all ever again, I think you're just like this wealth of knowledge and like just such a great resource for other people who are doing stuff. I think it's incredible. I don't know. It's just mind blowing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if anyone listens to this or reads this, like if you have any questions about setting up your own shit, like I will sit down with you on Zoom, like I'll take a phone call, shoot you an email, like whatever you need. Like I almost have like a standard template email that I now like send written so many times. Like I just send them that. I'm like, if you have any other questions after you read this, like just DM me or something.
Call it back.
But yeah, like if I do something again, I think it would be something small again, unfortunately, just to kind of keep the workload in hindsight like a little bit down for myself. And it'd probably be like less narrative driven and more just like, hey, like we all meet up somewhere neutral, like Nebraska, and throw down.
I love that idea. Yeah, I don't think all events need to be these epic I think I love Nemo. I think it's super cool, but I also love like an intimate, like there's just 10 of us getting together and we have like, 4 or 5 tables and we just like have a really awesome hangout and eat some snacks and, I love that stuff.
That's a really good point too about like, you're right. Like it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to make fucking handcrafted invitations. You don't have to host 50 people, like Steve was saying, like people will travel. So like once you engage with and find the people that are your people, like your like gaming tribe, like I think of the Hive Scum crew as like a tribe more than a group, but like when you find your own people, your own gaming people, like meet up somewhere for a weekend, like do a long weekend somewhere, like book an Airbnb somewhere, go to a library. And I think that's what's cool about Martin's event and Johnny's event, or Mike's event, excuse me, is that it really is showing just how accessible it can be doing it at a public fucking library. Like, hell yeah. And they're really leaning on like people. Yeah. Like this is just, Martin's got his event going on with Steve and I, but like outside of that, it's really just like show up, hang out, play some fucking games, roll some dice, maybe get a tattoo.
I'll be getting.
Wait, someone's giving tattoos there.
Well, Mike is a tattoo artist.
Oh
Yeah.
shit!
And so is technically, I think, Martin.
Oh yeah, Martin is too. It's funny because like all I see is Martin's art. I don't really see his tattoos too often.
Yeah.
Just because of how he does his Instagram. I always forget that he's a tattooer.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a tattoo from Mike or him, I think, too.
Dude, we've been talking about getting tattoos. It's just like a Hive Scum tattoo, like a Hive Scum crew tattoo. Getting some servo skulls or something.
Oh yeah.
But like you said, like small, intimate, like game spaces is like, I think it goes a long way for developing your niche community of like local friends that you play with. Because not everything has to be on a spectacle for everyone to see. Like not everyone has to see an event you're doing on Instagram. You know what I mean? Like, like do this for yourself too. A lot of people like get mixed up sometimes, but
Yeah, I think that's like a reoccurring thing from what you all have been saying. It's just like do it for yourself. Like make sure that you're enjoying it. Don't just do it for the Instagram pictures or whatever,
Yeah.
Is there like one moment from your event that really stands out as like something special that maybe isn't normally talked about or isn't captured on Instagram?
I think the feeling of everyone being in the room finally, the Basilisk tape is playing, everyone's there, everyone's waiting for, the day to start. I think that like I don't think that could be ever like photographed or that feeling could ever be captured.
Yeah.
Like that was like, it's something special to me. And I know Paul felt it too. Like I remember standing over near the front tables, just kind of like looking around, taking it all in. And Paul comes up to me. He's like, dude, like we did it. And like that like lives in my brain. Like him being so enthusiastic and stoked, and like, his family shows up and all of his buddies that, we kind of knew, but like, Paul has his own crew down where he lives, the Rocky Hill crew. And like, oh my God, like they really put in work, and like just seeing other people coming out that don't really know us that well, but because of Paul, they're like, oh fuck yeah, we're here to ride for you guys. Like seeing everyone coming together, like Gage and Terry and Phil, like Brandon, Lucian, like all our buddies that like don't care about Mordheim that much, or like are just like there because these things that we're doing are cool to them and they want to support. Like it's awesome. Yeah, like I don't think that could ever be captured.
What about you, Bill?
Yeah, like there was two. Like one was so my wife came, and it was like the first weekend I had been away from my kids like ever. And so like she showed up. I don't think she had them with her, but so she showed up and like made us all like come together and like took like a picture of all of us. And I'm really happy she did, because I was so like wrapped up in making sure everything was going well and all that kind of shit. Like I never would have thought of it, even though it's like the most obvious thing. And then when we were done, one of the guys came out and was like, man, thank you so much for like putting this together. Like one of the Europeans, Mark, he was like, this is like so fucking cool. It was like, this is worth it. And that kind of like blew my idea a little bit. So like just having that conversation with him, like he was so happy to be there and like having a good time. And like the other moment was a little kind of selfish, but like Adam Wire, has this like Sisters of Sigmar warband, and it's just fucking sick. Like possibly like some of the coolest minis like I had ever really seen on the internet. And like my first game, like when we drew like cards, like see who got, I played him first, and it was just so cool to actually like see them in person. And like I remember like looking down at the table, looking at his minis like on terrain that I'd made, and like I just like looked up at him and I was like, dude, like this is like a dream come true. Like thank you for flying down. Like these models are fucking wicked. So it was just cool to meet them, like kind of like I call them hobby heroes, like they're hobby heroes of mine. So it was really, really nice to see and see like how like nice they all are. Right. And now like through that event, like I'm now like with Paul and Steve, like I've got some more hobby heroes of mine that I like to like follow their stuff, you know? So it's been really, really cool to see and kind of expand my, I guess, hobby network.
And I don't even post on Instagram. I don't post anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was going to Nemo and I was like, I'm going to meet between the Bolter and me brothers. But I've been talking to them on the internet for like probably a couple of years at that point. And it was like, I feel a little nervous. Well, they turned out to be so nice.
They reached out being like, hey, we're going to come to your event. And we were all like, okay, why? And, you know, them showing up, like, oh my God, they're some of my favorite people now.
Yeah.
Like the fact that they came was so beautiful. Like taking that drive all the way over. You know, it was a two-handed thing. You know, they had friends in the area from grad school that they were visiting with their families and stuff. But you know that they only did that so that they could go play some Mordheim.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping next year. Like, you know, we had a lot of cancellations. You know, we had probably an extra 20 people that were signed up, bought tickets, and then just never showed up. And I don't know if the room could have handled more people, but, you know, we would have made do. But I think next year it's going to get bigger. Like same with Adepticon, Mordheim, like it's gotten to that event at Adepticon was so like hidden away, but people finding it were like, what day is Mordheim? I'm coming. And I'm like, you can't come. Like, there's no more. There's no slots left. Like, we don't have any room for people. And they're like, next year, I'm signing up. I'm going to be typing Mordheim into the search bar to sign up for that event. And I'm like, God damn it. All right. Well, I guess we'll have to figure it out for next year. But yeah, like once you show people the light, like they're all over it.
Awesome.
And that's a piece that kind of worries me for next year for all the events, but.
Now I'm nervous to meet the Hive Scum guys.
Don't be nervous. We're just a bunch of idiots.
Honestly, like it was so awesome to meet you all. Like I showed up at the game store the night before because you had said that like people were going to be like hanging out painting and stuff, and I was like I recognize some people from like the photographs you're posting, and I just like walk up and. I think I like ran into Gage and it was just like, hey, are you all the Mordheim people? And just like immediately like folded into like, yeah. It was awesome. And everybo's so like riffy and fun. And I don't know. It's just like, it's a great group of people.
Just a bunch of silly guys.
Yeah.
I think that's the beautiful part is like none of us take anything too seriously. So.
Yeah, I love that.
It's pretty easy to get along.
I've got my own opinion about that, but I'll save that for after the recording.
Word. Yeah, so I think that covered all my questions. Thank you so much for, carving out some time. Yeah, like we were talking about between the Bolter and me and stuff, it's like I learned so much from like listening to their podcasts and just like hearing them recap those events, and I'm like, oh, there's actually like a whole nother universe that's part of this miniature hobby that is where I want to be and so compelling. And I feel like your podcast, like Hive Scum and just all the documentation that's happened from your events. It's just inspiring and just it gets me so pumped. So
Yeah.
Steve, if you had one piece of advice to give to someone who wanted to run an event like yours, what would you give them? Or maybe interested in getting engaged in the hobby, whatever shape that takes.
Join the InRust Trust Discord. It's probably
that's great. That's great
probably
advice.
the best step.
It's not bad.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Is fine. I think finding an online community is much easier than finding an in-person community. Like,
Absolutely.
not everyone can be blessed with like having friends that are into the same stuff as you, like as far as nerd stuff, as well as being like connected as people. Like, not everyone can have that in a local enough area. So, like, I think trying to find it online and then moving from there is the best way to get involved.
Yeah, because like there's people in our local scene who are great people, but this idea of like putting your own mark on the hobby, like actually like being creative with it and like owning it yourself and not just having it like dictated to you by the company.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't even occur to them. And it's a deep perspective shift that I think needs to happen for some people to really resonate. But if you already like if you come from like DIY punk world, or if you just like have that as part of your core personality where you want to like be part of a group of people who are like making the hobby their own, it's hard to find people that have that perspective. And
100%.
And a group like the InRust Trust Discord, it's just full of people like that. It's just like it's like hundreds of people that are down.
Well, it's funny. We all like, it's all these people that have that same mindset, but a lot of us just play the same games. Yeah. But like, there's nothing, and I feel like this is something that came up in the Discord recently of like, oh, Age of Sigmar, boo-hoo, or oh, GW, current games, boo-hoo. But like, there's nothing wrong with playing the current age games that GW puts out as long as you're having fun.
Yeah.
Like, literally having fun is all you should really care about. And whether that's through kit bashing an army to play in whatever game system you want, or like homebrewing some rules for whatever games you're playing with your friends, or like going to tournaments and crushing tournaments, like whatever your thing is, like as long as you're having fun, no one else cares. Like, you know, people might have opinions about like what they perceive as fun or whatever, but like ultimately none of that matters because it's your interpretation, not theirs.
Yeah, totally.
But I do think it's, you know, there are game systems and there are game creators that really speak to our hobby and to our little niche community, like Forbidden Psalm, Morkborg. Like that game goes so far for the things I want, but also just doesn't cover things, but they give you the room to make whatever you want.
Yeah, I love that about that game. I think that there's this theme around this stuff where it's just like being afraid is normal. Like people are nervous about this stuff, but just take the step and do it, whether it's showing up to an event or even just joining a Discord or running your own event. Like just take that step, just take that next step, and like you'll find people.
100%.
You know, I think part of that though, like stems from like being comfortable in your own skin. Like, you know, Steve mentioned earlier how like, you know, people can be kind of embarrassed about our hobby. Like I call it nerding. Like whenever my wife's just like, "Are you going to the garage to go nerd?" And like, and like one of the recurring themes I hear from people, and they're like, I've met with people on Discord just to like do a hobby hangout, like probably like a shit ton of people just this year alone, including yourself, Trey. Like the recurring theme that I hear from people is that there's shame associated with playing with like little plastic toy soldiers.
Or plastic men.
Yeah. So like people may not be comfortable enough in their own skin to like be curious about our hobby, right? Like whether that's like you do what GW tells you and how GW tells you how to do it, and like see if that's what makes you happy, that's awesome. Or like if you go like kind of an alternative route. But like at the end of the day, it's really up to you to be comfortable enough with yourself and kind of take ownership of that, of your own interests, and don't really give a shit what other people think. Like if you're interested in something, approach people, like ask questions, like at a depth. It's okay to be interested in these things.
Yeah. It's also okay to like not know.
Yeah.
Like, and actually like in some ways like not knowing and like that gap between like where you are and like the type of events you want to run is like a creative space that you can fill with like whatever you want to happen in the scene. Like, and so like not knowing is good sometimes, like because you get to learn from other people.
You know, especially like the guys that came over the Invitational last year, like both Germans that came were fucking doctors. Like, and with them, like you would never imagine that they're like these like cutthroat Mordheim players.
Well, I mean, the Wires are also doctors.
Yeah.
You had probably like 8 doctors in that. I don't know if you realize that.
Yeah, like you would never fucking know like off the street, right? So like, I don't know. It's easier said than done, like taking ownership of that. But I encourage people, like if you're on the fence about it or if you have questions, just ask, because I think you'll be surprised of the response that you get from people.
Head swap.